I watched as my parents walked into the graduation hall, holding a bouquet of sunflowers, their favorite. My heart skipped, just for a moment, thinking maybe, this time. But no, they walked straight past me and handed them to my brother, Lucas. He wasn't graduating. He wasn't even in school. I stood there clapping for others, invisible in my own victory. And then, the mayor called my name. The spotlight hit me like lightning. Cheers roared. My parents froze. And in that split second, I knew. I was done begging to be seen. From as early as I could remember, every dinner at our house felt like a celebration of Lucas. He didn't need to do anything special. He could walk in late, talk with his mouth full, interrupt someone mid-sentence. And still, the air seemed to wrap itself around him like he was the sun, and we were just orbiting. Meanwhile, I'd sit there with my straight A's, my extracurricular medals, my dean's list letters, waiting for someone to say, "Good job, Emily." It never came. Instead, my mother would ask Lucas if he needed more mashed potatoes. When I was 19, I was awarded a national STEM scholarship, something only 15 students in the country received. I came home trembling, holding the envelope like it was pure gold. My mother glanced at it, nodded vaguely, and said, "That's nice, honey. Oh, Lucas just told me he's finishing his online coding course next week. Isn't that great?" I stood there, smiling, nodding, clenching the envelope behind my back until it crinkled. It wasn't that they hated me. They just didn't see me. Or worse, they didn't want to. One night, 2 weeks before graduation, I found myself searching for ribbon in the storage closet for my own project. That's when I saw it. Our family's graduation invitations. They were beautifully printed, tucked neatly into cream-colored envelopes, sealed with a gold sticker. Out of curiosity, I peeled one open. It was addressed to our neighbors, but something felt off. I opened another, then another, and then I found mine. Or at least, I thought I did. There, right where my name should have been, was an awkward space. The font was slightly shifted. I flipped the envelope over and found the discarded piece inside. A tiny cutout of my name, left behind like a paper scar. Someone had sliced me out of my own moment. I didn't want to believe it, but the scissors on the desk, the glue stick still uncapped. It was all too fresh. I stood frozen. A breeze from the hallway lifted the edge of the cut paper. I picked it up. My name. Emily Grace Holloway, in cursive. Removed cleanly, like I never belonged. Later that night, I stared at myself in the mirror. Not out of vanity, out of disbelief. My lips moved, but no words came. Just one thought. If I disappeared, would they even notice? Or would they just adjust, like I was never there in the first place? The next morning, I searched for answers. Not facts, because deep down I already knew. I needed reasons. Why was I the one left out when I tried so hard to be good, to be worthy? That's when I found the letter. It wasn't hidden. Not really. Tucked under a pile of mail on Lucas's desk, probably because he hadn't bothered to read it. A handwritten note from my mother, folded neatly, signed with her signature loop. My heart was already racing before I even read the first line. "Lucas, I know Emily seems like she's always achieving something, always pushing, always shining. But don't let it discourage you. She only tries so hard because she wants attention. You've always had a steadier spirit. Don't worry. I'll never let her take that spotlight from you." The air left my lungs. The words blurred. And then came the strangest part. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even hurt. I was numb. Because something inside me clicked. All these years I thought I was invisible. But no, I had been contained, deliberately. I wasn't forgotten. I was managed. Dad wasn't much better. For him, Lucas was the next generation, the man of the house. He once told me while reading the news that daughters were emotional support, while sons carried the legacy. I had laughed, thinking it was a joke. Now it didn't feel funny. That day I stopped asking, why don't they love me the same? And started wondering, what would they do if they couldn't hold me back anymore? That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan spinning above me like a silent clock. A part of me wanted to get up, confront them, scream even. But I didn't. I knew if I broke down now, they'd only say I was being dramatic, sensitive, overthinking. So instead I pulled out my journal and wrote just one question across the page. Have you ever felt like the rough draft in your own family? I stopped talking about my achievements at home. There was no point. Every certificate I brought back felt like throwing a pebble into an ocean. No ripple, no echo, just silence. So I shifted my energy inward. Quietly, methodically, I started rebuilding myself like a private project, not to impress them, not even to prove them wrong, but because I had to survive my own erasure. While others posted about parties and campus crushes, I was up at dawn researching grant applications. I taught myself how to build data visualizations. I volunteered to teach coding to kids in underfunded schools. I applied and was accepted as a state research assistant on climate resilience. I didn't tell anyone, not even my closest friends. It felt safer that way. My success had become sacred. If they couldn't celebrate it, at least they couldn't stain it. I operated like a secret machine, efficient, focused, silent. But even machines break. One Thursday night after a 12-hour study shift and back-to-back meetings, I returned to the dorm and found my roommate sprawled across her bed, laughing at a sitcom. I tried to greet her, but my voice cracked. I sat on my bed, opened my laptop, and stared at the screen until my vision blurred. Then, without warning, the tears came. Not loud, just a steady, quiet stream, like someone had unscrewed the cap of a tightly sealed bottle. She looked over, paused the show, and said nothing. She just walked over and sat beside me, wrapping an arm around my shoulder. "You don't need them to see you," she whispered. "You see you, and that's enough." That broke me more than the tears did. For a moment, I allowed myself to collapse, to admit I was tired. Tired of being strong, tired of being silent, tired of trying to earn what should have been freely given. The next morning, I was back at my desk. But something inside had shifted. I no longer felt like I was running on empty. I was running on truth, and that had power. Still, the weight didn't leave. The more I succeeded, the more invisible I felt at home. My inbox was full of congratulations, from professors, colleagues, even strangers. But not one message from my parents, not a single "we're proud of you." And so the dreams began. I'd find myself standing alone in an empty graduation hall, rows of chairs deserted, stage lights off, no names called, no applause. Just me, in a cap and gown, holding a rolled-up scroll that disintegrated in my hands. Sometimes my parents were in the audience, sitting with their backs turned. Sometimes they weren't there at all. I started journaling again. At first, it was just a few lines before bed, then paragraphs, then pages. I never named names, just feelings. The ache of being overlooked, the quiet rage of never being chosen, the hollow pride of winning in silence. One night, on impulse, I uploaded one of those entries to an anonymous blog. I titled it, "When You Shine and No One Claps." I didn't expect anything. Maybe a like or two from strangers scrolling past. I closed the laptop and went to sleep. By morning, the post had over 10,000 views, and climbing. Comments flooded in. I thought I was the only one. This felt like reading my own thoughts. I cried. Thank you for writing this. Someone even wrote, "You are seen. We see you." For the first time in years, I felt less alone. A week later, as I walked into my environmental ethics lecture, I noticed something strange. My professor, Dr. Chen, a brilliant, soft-spoken woman who rarely spoke of anything personal, was holding a printed copy of my post. My heart jumped. Did she know? She glanced up as I sat, then down again at the paper. The class went on as usual. Notes, slides, discussions. But at the end, as students began filing out, she called my name. "Emily, could you stay a moment?" I froze. When the room emptied, she held up the paper. "This," she said gently, "was left on my desk." Silence. I've read it 5 times, every word. It's one of the most honest things I've seen in a long time. My hands were cold, my throat dry. "Emily," she said, looking directly at me now, "did you write this?" I didn't answer Dr. Chen that day. I just nodded slightly, gathered my things, and left. But her eyes stayed with me all night, calm, certain, unafraid to see me. That was the first time I felt like someone looked straight through my quiet. A week later, I received an email from the university. I had been selected to give the student speech at commencement. I reread the message 3 times. At first, I thought of forwarding it to my parents. But I didn't. Not because I was bitter. Because I didn't want this moment to be filtered through their silence. So I accepted. Quietly. Decidedly. The days that followed felt like a blur of new beginnings. I signed a lease on a small studio apartment 15 minutes from campus. I learned how to grocery shop for one, how to cook pasta without burning the pot, how to eat alone without scrolling through my phone to avoid the silence. It was lonely, but it was mine. Every inch of it. The freedom, the fear, the space. At night, I'd lie on the floor, stare at the ceiling, and wonder if they ever talked about me when I wasn't around. If Lucas ever asked where I was, if they missed me at dinner. But I didn't let those thoughts live too long. I had stories to write, speeches to draft, a life to rebuild. Then came the knock on my apartment door. It was late. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, Lucas stood there, hands in his pockets, eyes down, like he had memorized every crack on the hallway floor. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside, wordless. He didn't sit, just paced a little, then stopped near the window. "I found Mom crying," he said, barely louder than a whisper. "She thinks you hate her. She doesn't get it. She keeps saying she gave up so much for us. And Dad, he still thinks this is just a phase." I said nothing. Lucas turned to me then. "They want you to fail, Emily. They won't admit it, but they do. Because if you don't, then everything they believed about raising us, it all falls apart. And they're scared of that, of being wrong." I watched him, waiting for a punchline. There wasn't one. He rubbed the back of his neck. "I think you scare them. You shine too bright." I almost laughed, but it came out as a breath. Before he left, he added, "I used to think they were right about you, but they're not." After he was gone, I stared at the unopened invitation box sitting on my desk. I took one card out, scribbled only my mother's name on the front, and sealed it. No message, no explanation, just her name. Then I mailed it the next morning. I didn't know if she'd come, but it didn't matter. Around that time, the blog where I'd posted anonymously began to gain traction. Readers shared their own stories of being overlooked, erased, managed. One woman wrote, I thought I was the only one whose parents didn't clap. A man said, "This feels like breathing after years underwater." So I created a small online space, just a simple forum where people could talk without judgment, no filters, no edits. I called it The Unders. For those who had been underseen, underheard, underestimated, it was raw, messy, beautiful. One night, scrolling through the forum, I wrote a sentence that felt like oxygen. I stopped proving. I started living. I posted it, then logged off. By morning, the phrase was everywhere, reposted, shared, screen printed on t-shirts, turned into tattoos. It wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to anyone who needed it. Then came the dip. 2 days before graduation, I opened my speech draft and felt empty. Like the words weren't enough. Like I wasn't enough. Who was I anyway? A girl with good grades? A walking trauma story? What if they all sat there and wondered why I got chosen? I almost emailed the committee to back out. I wrote the message, hovered over send, and froze. That night, as I stared at the email draft, another message popped up, a short one, from a name I didn't recognize. "I'm 14. I read your blog every night. I've never told anyone this, but I don't feel loved in my house either. You made me believe I'm worth seeing. Thank you." I read it again, and again, and again. Then I closed the cancellation draft. Instead, I pulled out the shirt I planned to wear under my gown and took a fabric pen. In tiny script along the sleeve, I wrote, "You made me believe I'm worth seeing. Not for them. For her. For me. For every girl like me." The auditorium buzzed with noise, the air vibrating with excitement and the rustle of graduation robes. I stood near the wings of the stage, hands folded tight, trying not to look at the crowd. I didn't need to see them. I knew exactly who wasn't there for me, until I did. Through the crack in the curtain, I spotted my parents entering. My heart skipped. They came? Then I saw it. They were holding a bouquet, bright sunflowers wrapped in gold foil, my favorite. But they didn't look for me. Instead, they turned and walked toward the audio station at the back of the hall, where Lucas stood wearing a headset and a staff badge. He was helping run the soundboard for the ceremony. They handed him the bouquet, smiling wide, proud like it was his day. Lucas looked confused. He glanced toward the stage, toward me. I turned away. The ceremony began. One by one, names were called. Students stepped forward. Applause rang out. Flashes went off. My name was last, saved for the keynote and the special announcement. The host paused. "Now, we have the honor of introducing a student whose academic excellence, community leadership, and resilience have made her stand out above all others." I heard my name echo through the speakers. Emily Grace Holloway, this year's Student of the Year, awarded by the city mayor himself. Time stopped. I walked onto the stage under blinding lights. I couldn't see the audience, but I felt them. Thousands of eyes, clapping hands, holding breaths. The mayor shook my hand and handed me the plaque. Then the mic was mine. I had memorized the speech, but I didn't recite it. Instead, I said this. I used to think that being seen meant being loud, that if I achieved enough, shouted enough, begged hard enough, someone would look my way. But sometimes the silence speaks louder, and in that silence, I found my voice. I paused. To everyone who ever made me feel invisible, thank you. I became unforgettable trying to forget you. The room exploded in applause. I caught a glimpse of my mother standing near the back. Her face had crumbled. She clutched her purse, the bouquet now crushed in her arms. She took a shaky step forward, as if to come toward the stage. I turned, walked off. Backstage, Lucas was waiting. He didn't speak at first, just nodded and held out his fist for a quiet congratulations. Then he leaned in. "I was the one who nominated you," he whispered. "The mayor's office requested recommendations. I sent your name. I didn't tell them I was your brother." For the first time, I truly looked at him, not as the boy who always got the attention, but as the man trying to return what was never his to keep. "Thank you," I said, and meant it. That night, my name was in headlines, not just on campus blogs, but on regional news. Ignored by her family, crowned by her city. The graduation speech that silenced a room. There were no angry mobs, no drama, just quiet admiration. Commenters called me brave, said they cried, said they saw themselves in me. And in every compliment there was a soft sting. Why did I need strangers to see what my family refused to? My parents didn't contact me for 3 days. I didn't expect them to. Then, out of nowhere, a voice message arrived. I sat on my bed for 20 minutes before hitting play. "Emily," my mother said, her voice hoarse and trembling. "I watched your speech again and again. I kept trying to hear what you were really saying, and I realized I don't know who you are anymore. I don't know when I lost you. Maybe I never really had you. But I want to try again. I want to learn who you are now." I didn't know whether to cry or laugh. That voice, so familiar and so foreign, felt like the first crack in a wall I never thought would budge. That night, I didn't journal. I just sat in the dark, remembering the sounds of dinners long ago, the clink of forks, the easy laughter, the way we used to sit close on the couch before everything was a competition for love. And I realized something I hadn't let myself admit. I missed it. Not the pain, not the imbalance, but the idea of a family that loved loudly, loved fairly. I had tried so hard to move on, to build something new, that I hadn't made space for that longing. But it was there. It had always been there. Still, I didn't respond to her message. Not yet. Some things take time. Some stories need silence before they speak again. It started with one phone call. A therapist came recommended by Dr. Chen, a woman named Marla with a quiet voice and eyes that seemed to carry generations of understanding. I wasn't sure what I was looking for when I stepped into her office. Closure? Clarity? Maybe just someone who didn't expect me to smile and nod when I was breaking inside. I sat down on the plush gray couch, arms crossed, posture defensive. "You don't have to perform here," she said on our first session. "You're not on stage." That was the first time I realized how much I'd made performance a survival skill. Over weeks, then months, we unpacked it all. The silence, the favoritism, the internal war between needing love and learning to live without it. I didn't cry at every session. Some days I just stared out the window. Others I spoke for an hour without pause. Slowly the ache became a story, and the story became something I could carry without flinching. Forgiveness was the hardest part, not because they didn't deserve it, but because I wasn't sure if I deserved to release the weight so soon. But I learned that forgiveness wasn't permission. It wasn't an invitation to repeat harm. It was just a quiet decision. I'm not taking this pain with me anymore. At some point, I started writing again. Not in journals, not anonymous blog posts. A book. Not for revenge. Not to make them read and regret. But because I wanted the girl I used to be, the one crying alone in her dorm room, to know she wasn't the only one. I wanted to leave a breadcrumb trail for anyone lost in the dark corners of their own families. I wrote in the early mornings before the world woke up, at coffee shops where no one knew me, in bed with the lights low, whispering truths onto the page. By the time it was done, the title came to me like breath. Dear Daughter, from the Girl You Ignored. My publisher was hesitant. It's too raw, they said. Too specific. I didn't care. That was the point. When it was released, it didn't go viral overnight. But slowly, steadily, people found it. Young women, grown men, therapists, teachers. Some left reviews that made me cry. Others sent emails full of their own stories. Proof that mine was never isolated. Healing didn't come with applause. It came quietly, through long walks, through learning to say no without guilt, through sitting at dinner with friends who never made me feel less. And one day, it came through creation. I launched an organization called Underseen, a safe space, online and in person, for students who felt sidelined, silenced, overlooked in their own homes. We ran support groups, offered micro-grants for therapy, hosted speaker nights and workshops about reclaiming worth. The first meeting had 5 attendees. By month 6, we had over 200 members and branches at 3 universities. Some just came to listen. Others spoke for the first time in their lives. Once, after a particularly emotional group session, someone asked me, "How did you even come up with this?" I smiled. "I didn't," I said. "It was always inside me. I just stopped hiding it." Then came the twist I never saw coming. Lucas. He emailed me one afternoon. The subject line read, "I want to help." In the message, he wrote, "You're doing something that matters. I want to support it, not as your brother, just as someone trying to be better." He showed up to the next event, quietly, no announcement, just a volunteer badge and a willingness to stack chairs, set up water bottles, and listen. Over time, I watched him connect with attendees, especially the ones who didn't know how to talk about their families without shaking. He never spoke about ours, but he showed up, week after week, and that meant more than anything he could have said. Then, at a conference panel we hosted 6 months later, it happened. I had just finished a reading from my book. The line for signing was long but quiet. People waited patiently, books in hand, some teary-eyed, others just thoughtful. Near the end of the line, I saw them. My parents. They stood side by side. No flowers, no fanfare. Just my book in my mother's hands. She waited until it was their turn. Then, instead of handing it to me, she held it against her chest and said softly, "Would you sign this for who you are now?" I took the book, opened to the first page, and wrote, "To the girl they missed, and the parents who finally looked." The fundraiser was set in an old music hall downtown. Nothing grand, but warm, with velvet curtains and imperfect lights that gave it charm. We were raising money to fund therapy scholarships through Underseen. Instead of a gala, I chose a concert. Something live, human, vulnerable. I sent invitations to everyone who had supported the movement, past and present. I sent one to Lucas, one to Dr. Chen, and on a quiet impulse, I sent one to my parents. I didn't expect them to come. I didn't even expect them to read the invite. But on the night of the concert, as I stood behind the curtain, glancing over the list of performers and the schedule, I felt that unmistakable pulse again, nerves colliding with memory. The music began. Poets read. A girl performed a song she wrote about growing up invisible. Every word was a mirror. When my turn came, I stepped onto the stage without notes, just a mic and breath. "I used to think love was something loud," I began, "something that made you feel obvious. But now I know. It's not about who claps. It's about who listens, even after all the music stops." As I looked over the crowd, something caught in my throat. Near the back, side by side, were my parents. No camera, no flowers, no whispering. Just sitting, watching, quiet. I didn't look too long. I kept going. I told the story of the forum, of the girl who messaged me late at night saying she'd felt seen for the first time, of the boy who walked across a state line to attend our first meeting. I didn't mention my family, but every word carried their shadow. After the show ended, I stepped into the hallway, catching my breath. That's when I heard footsteps. My father approached, hands in his jacket pockets like a boy in trouble. "We didn't know how to say anything," he said. "So we didn't. And then it just got longer. The silence." I waited. He shifted, searching for words, then looked me in the eyes for the first time in a long while. "We're late, Emily, but you're a show that's never too late to watch." A laugh escaped me, not out of humor, but disbelief, that after all this time he found a way to make sense. I nodded slowly. "You can learn again," I said, "but I won't be waiting." He nodded back. He understood. It wasn't a movie ending. No hugs, no sweeping music, just space and choice. After that night, something in me settled. Not healed completely, but grounded. I knew what I had, what I didn't, and what I no longer needed. The world, it turned out, was wide enough for me. Months later, I stood on a TEDx stage in San Francisco, a red dot under my shoes, and a global audience in my future. The title of my talk? The Girl Who Outgrew Their Silence. I told the story, but not just mine. I wove in the voices of others, those who had written to me, met me, stood with me in quiet halls. I told them that being unseen didn't mean unworthy, that absence of applause wasn't absence of value, that their story still mattered, even if the people who were supposed to love them first never learned how. The talk went viral, and with it came opportunity. I was approached by a publisher to write a new series, fiction this time, for teenagers, for the ones still stuck at home, still wondering if they mattered. I called the series The Girl Who Didn't Wait to Be Chosen. Each book a different voice, a different kind of silence, and how it broke. Bookstores began to carry them on recommended shelves. Teachers used them in classrooms. Young readers wrote letters saying the characters felt like secret siblings. I had gone from ghost to guide. And yet, I didn't feel famous. I felt real. People no longer remembered me as that girl from the speech. They remembered me as the one who stayed, the one who created spaces where people felt visible, the one who never stopped showing up. I wasn't a legacy of pain anymore. I was a legacy of presence. And one day, as I closed a laptop after another late-night interview, I sat back and looked at the framed quote on my wall. It wasn't from any speech or any book. It was the last sentence of the last chapter I had written in my journal before the silence broke. If your name is never on their lips, make sure your story is forever in their hearts.